Full Throttle. One of the gems from LucasArts slash Lucasfilm. This was released in 1995, and one of their big games for them. I mean, how can you go wrong with bikers in a post-apocalyptic future? Yeah, I first saw this in 1996, I believe. Yeah, my roommate for my first half of my junior year, use the term loosely there, roommate that is. He was only ever in the room like one or out of 5 times or so. But the one time he was in the room, he had this game on his computer. He was having trouble with one part. I remember going to, let's see, at the time it was B. Dalton at Park City Mall. It's not there anymore. And I found the answer to what he was looking for, but this was one of those games that it was very hard to die in because LucasArts. You could, but if you made a mistake, they give you a chance to, correct it. I mean, the only place you could, quote, die is towards the end of the game. But it has one of the best. Its story is very good. First off, you play Ben Throttle. I don't think they ever. It's like assumed to be his last name. I mean, yeah, I've heard weirder last names in my life, but in the course of the game, when the game opens up, you are introduced to the some characters, plot point, and main villain. You are introduced to Malcolm Corley, who is the head of Corley Motors, one of the last companies in this world that makes, wheeled vehicles, especially, stuff for motorcycles. Well, as you are, he is heading to a shareholders meeting with his vice president, which is Adrian Ripburger. Also, driving the vehicle is in the front of the vehicle are two of Ripburger's flunkies. Well, here's how it works. See, Rip is plotting to get rid of Corley. And it is Rip's suggestion to Corley. And Corley doesn't trust Rip, but the only reason he keeps him around is because he's shrewd enough to get around this business world. Although Rip has convinced Corley of some bad ideas. Well, Ripburger comes up with the idea of Corley being escorted to the shareholders' meeting by one of the groups of motorcycle gangs in the world. As it so happens, this is about the time when the Polecats, which Ben is the leader of, comes by. I mean, the others sort of zoom along aside the vehicle. Ben manages to pop a wheelie up onto the limo, over the limo, and then continue on off of the limo, which actually impresses Corley. You like that. So they end up following the polecats to a biker bar, and Corley goes in in there a little bit longer than Adrian expected, and here it is. Corley is trading stories with Ben and the polecats. Well, Rip Burger comes in, takes Ben aside, explains how Corley was hoping to have the motorcycle group, escort him in. Well, what happens is that Ben says no. Corley, of course, Ripburger has his goons knock Ben out. One poses as Ben and takes Ben's bike and heads ahead. Of course, returning with it after, you know, Adrian gets going. Adrian gets everything going, and the polecats follow. Now, Ben gets out of the dumpster he was thrown into, gets his bike, which was returned, goes after them. Oh, but, typical to keep things from going awry, they have the bike sabotaged. Comes apart on Ben as he's driving. He crashes. A local, quote, journalist manages to pick him up and bring him to a town where we meet Maureen, who was raised by her uncle, and she's a bit of a dynamo when it comes to motorcycles. You find out later she was also a member of a bike gang herself, that being the Vultures. Well, as Corley, as Ben explains what happened, he's got to catch up to a gang. There's going to be a problem if he doesn't. Well, Maureen can fix his bike, but she's missing. She's going to need gas. She needs her blowtorch, which mysteriously disappeared. Local asshole in town stole it. Also going to need parts, which are in the junkyard owned by the asshole. And of course, the only place to get fuel is a fuel tank reservoir, which is, of course, under guard, airborne guard. So Ben has to figure out a way to get that, somehow get a hold of the fuel, get the parts, which takes some clever planning, and of course, get the torch, which will involve knocking the guy out. Of course, once you get everything done and get the fuel and all that, and you have to, trick the the local police from catching you, so you have to do that. Ben makes his way you know, makes his way back to the town. Well, makes his way back to where the guys are, only to get there a little too late. Luckily, somebody did get there before the murder happened, and that would be our little reporter. She took a picture, but the camera got stolen by one of Rip's lackeys. Well, of course, Ben arrives there late, and Corley says it was Rip Burger who killed him. he's dying. Rip Burger's the one who did it. But he instructs Ben to find his daughter, an illegitimate daughter named Maureen. Called her the Diaper Dynamo. Well, Rip Burger's goons are only after Maureen. In fact, when Ben heads back there, we find that Maureen already took care of the goon that went after her and departed, even with the camera. She never looked at what was on the film. But what she knows is that the polecats were, quote, blamed for accused of the murder, and that Ben was probably the one behind it. That's what she thinks. So she heads to the only place that she'll be safe with the vultures. She's a vulture. Well, at first she heads to her uncle's mink farm where she was raised. So, of course, Ben heads there. Of course, he needs to get by, and so he relies on a trucker. And if you don't know anything about biker lore and all that stuff and actual reality, usually bikers and truckers don't get along. And so this trucker actually sabotages, takes something off Ben's bike. But drops him off at the mink farm and heads on with, of course, his stuff that he took. And of course, there were problems. Ben could already detect problems with that truck. Well, as it goes, Ben's checking out the mink farm and finds out, yeah, Mo was there, and she headed off. Ben goes to pursue, and they enter into what is called cavefish territory. The cavefish are a very weird biker gang. They dwell in the dark, so they wear special goggles. I mean, they really couldn't see if they took, because of all the time they spend in the dark. And they have a strange fascination with this stunt driver. This daredevil stunt driver. A futuristic Evel Knievel, who apparently jumped a gorge using only his motorcycle. Of course, we also found out it was modified later. But the cavefish have the ramp. And they also attack any truck for salvage. And this guy was, well, unfortunately, he had a cargo of fertilizer. But, they attack him. The attack causes the truck to blow up while crossing the bridge, wrecking the bridge. Now, Ben follows. Now that you're in cavefish territory, he's got to figure out how he's going to cross the bridge. Now, if you go along the old mine road in that area, you will run across bikers from various gangs, which you will have to beat to either get weapons or get something you need to progress. You'll need to get a new booster from a vulture. Luckily, there's one riding along the road for fights, and yes, you will have to fight while on this road. You'll run across the former leader of the polecats, Father Torque, and he'll give you advice when you talk to him. You also run across cavefish, which means you have to figure a way to defeat them and get one of their goggles. You have to do it right. If you down a cavefish with the wrong weapon, or with a weapon and all that, before they can use an oil slick to throw you off, you will they will basically make their vehicle self-destruct, killing them in the process. You need their goggles to find their hideout, because you're going to need the ramp, and you're going to have to use the ramp to trick them and escape with it. You also need a hover thingy, and you can get that off a wrecked vehicle. But you have to basically get that vehicle wrecked in the process. Of course, it's around this time, like especially after the whole the Mo thing happens, where he sends one of the lunkies to get that. He's like, "Oh, that's right. You're the smart." It says to the other one with him, "Oh, that's right. You're the smart one, aren't you?" Hinting that the other one is just dumb muscle. Usually how it works. You have one that's the dumb muscle and one that's the thinker. The skinnier one's usually the thinker. Well, after you get everything and jump that gorge, you end up in Corleyville, where the factory is, and they're holding off the shareholders meeting until the murderer is caught. Translation: Ripburger doesn't want anything to jeopardize his plan. He also has to find Maureen. However, everybody is enjoying that good old hobby that involves vehicles. Demolition Derby. Well, Ben has to, but we also find that the vulture lair is not too far from Corleyville. So, Ben is going to have to use, but of course they are very paranoid people there, so they have a minefield. So Ben will have to figure a way to get past them. He needs some decoys that keep going and going and going and going. At least what they do with that is they have Raya the Valkyries playing da dun da 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 dun da 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 dun da 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 dun dun da da dun. Of course, once you make it to the vulture lair, they don't welcome you very kindly because you are suspected for killing Corley. Well, if all you have to do is catch her, pass some knowledge on. And she'll, when you mention, once you give, say, a certain nickname Mo had, and she asks about something you mentioned the camera, and it says, if you develop the film in that camera, you'll see who killed your father. So now they come up with a plan. You see, the prize for the demolition derby is going to be the motorcycle that, Ben, that Malcolm and Marine put together. On one of the pieces, there is a code that you will need to open Corley's safe in his office. But to get that motorcycle, they're going to have to compete in a demolition derby, which is what Ripburger wants. You see, he's going to have, hey, she competes in the demolition derby, then we kill her. So they come up with a plan. Plain and simple. Here's how it's going to work. Maureen and Ben are going to enter in disguise. This is delivered by, of course, the leader of the Vultures, who is voiced by Tress MacNeille. And this is what we're going to do. See, Ben is we're going to rig up things for Maureen to be ejected out of the motorcycle. Ejected out. And of course, nobody will notice it happening because, we have a setup that when Ben's vehicle hits Maureen, she'll be ejected. There'll be a massive explosion. And Ben, costumed as the masked something or other, well, you're going to be the distraction running around there all aflame. You'll be safe in your asbestos suit. Before we fully got all the word on how dangerous asbestos was. But Ripburger is expecting it and has his two goons in a fifth vehicle for this. They're not going to make it easy. Of course, you have to figure out what you have to do in the demolition derby. It's easy to find which vehicle is Maureen, but you can't do it while you got to do something to incapacitate Ripburger's goons. And once you hit, do everything and Ben's running around, then you have to do some trickery to, get them to, off themselves. Which, you gotta love Ripburger. While his goons are gone, he just made himself 20,000 shares because he promised each one of them 10,000 shares. So now Ripburger's ready to start the shareholders meeting. So of course you have to get into the office, which there's a back way in. In the original, you had to be pixel perfect with where you, quote, kicked when everything lined up. You had to watch the meters, and when they were all lined up with their mark, that's when you were supposed to kick to open the secret passage into Morley's office. Now, once you do all that, your next job is to get the information and the photo to the presentation, which also includes an audio will. Get there in time. Maureen has snuck into the shareholders meeting. And with the image of Ripburger killing Malcolm and Marie showing up, as well as the audio will, Ripburger's out of a job. But he gets away. So now they're trying to, of course, ride off into the sunset, so to speak. But Ripburger's not done yet. He's now going to try and off the two of them. which involves a little bit of humor and outrunning a massive fireball explosion as the game ends with Maureen now in charge of Corley Motors. Almost a hinting of a relationship between Ben and Maureen, except the corporate world is not for Ben. And when she is distracted with business for a moment, he sneaks out of the vehicle and rides off into the sunset. Of course, what's nice is though that when we have a funeral service for Malcolm, you see Father Torque giving the eulogy. You see the polecats, the vultures, even a couple other biker gangs are paying their last respects to the man who still provided them with motorcycles. Full Throttle is an experience. It is a fun game. It is one that you should definitely experience, especially with Double Fine refining things and allowing you to see between the classic and the new. Even working with the controls that we have, like controllers like on the Xbox and that you can use on systems nowadays, this is a fun experience. Especially if you get the remastered, you get access to some interesting stories from the production of the game. I listened to some of them after I finished it. You get to if you get to hear one of Mark Hamill's villainous roles with a touch of offbeat comedy in it too. And there were a lot of big names that worked on this. Maureen is voiced by voice actress Kath Soucie. She has played many roles over the years. I mean, with LucasArts, they always had good money, and LucasArts made products that were good. They treated every game like it would be a blockbuster. Which is, and a good many of their games were blockbusters. Now, sadly, I think at the time of this recording, the voice actor who voiced Ben had passed away years ago, I think. And that's the thing. They kept everything from the original, voice lines and everything. But yes, definitely play Full Throttle. It's an experience. You'll enjoy it. And that's all I'm going to say about Full Throttle. I hope you enjoyed hearing what I had to say about it, and I hope you take time to purchase it and play it for yourself. Until next time, take care, folks, and have fun. Bye!